So, Wayne, thank you so much for being with us today. I am so excited to have you.
I'm thrilled to be here. It's awesome. The journey has brought us back together, so I love that.
I know. Yeah. So, just for everyone listening, just a brief kind of update. I met you back when I was living in Dallas area and I was in real estate and I was not ever really super good at real estate. I was kind of struggling, but I did always enjoy like the workshops and the self-development side of things that come with being in real estate. And you were just such a highlight to that time for me. And you have such an incredible story and this process of, becoming your own hero. I just loved everything that you're so vulnerable in telling your story, and I think you understand the importance of doing that, and it just really left an impression on me. And so just kind of recently, as I was preparing for this new season, I randomly just started seeing your posts a little bit more often in my feed, and it just kind of felt like a sign to reach out to you. So thank you so much, seriously, for being here.
I love how the universe works that way. So
Yes,
it brings
me
us
too.
together when we're supposed to be. It's awesome.
Yeah, me too. And so for this new season, it's just about creating that impact in the world. It's about sharing yourself fully and really understanding the importance of that. And I know you have taken so much ownership of that in your own life. So I'm just going to dive right in if that's okay and start with
Let's
the
do
heavy
it. Let's get right
questions.
after it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Wayne, tell me, what does it mean to become your own hero? And why is it so important?
So I think for me, being your own hero is more of a verb and less of a noun. You know what I mean? It's less of like, I think a lot of times we think about being a hero, we think of like one heroic act, you know what I mean, that someone did. And there is that aspect, and some people we look up to have done that. Yet for most of us, it's more about like heroic living. And I think heroic living is like the day you didn't want to get out of bed and you did anyway, or the day like you didn't want to call a friend and ask for help and you did anyway. And like it's doing the tough stuff on a day-to-day basis. And for me, it's standing up for yourself, you know what I mean, and kind of when nobody's coming to save you, like you got to take that role. And that's for me, it's more of a day-to-day decision that I have to make, less of a one-time, great thing. So
Right. Right, exactly. And I have had the privilege of talking to a lot of people about their healing journey. And also with my own personal experience, I know that life shifted. It changed so dramatically when I realized no one is coming to save me.
yeah,
It's up to
yeah,
me to save myself.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I would love if you could share just a little bit about your own hero's journey and just
yes.
that process of becoming and what that was like for you and how you've ended up here today.
Yeah. Well, it's a continuation. The journey continues, but I think a big moment for me, and I've had a couple in my life of kind of big moments, and yet, years ago, about 13 years ago, I had, have you ever had a moment in life where like the inside, and the outside were not aligned? On the outside, everything looked really good in my life, and I was like married with 3.2 kids. Like I was involved in community, like everything looked great on the outside. I had checked all the boxes, and yet on the inside, I was in like massive turmoil, and life was not working. And I ended up like having an affair. I ended up screwing up my business. I messed up everything in my life to the point where I was like sleeping on the floor of a vacant building, and I'm laying on the floor of a vacant building, and time had gone on, and I was convinced that, I think up to that point, I don't know if you would have talked about somebody committing suicide, I probably would have been like, hey, that's kind of selfish. Why would somebody do that? Like, just not understanding. But yet, for me in that moment, I was convinced that it was the best thing I could do. I was convinced that it would be the best thing for my kids, that it would be the best thing for the world if I just checked out. And it's hard unless you've been through that, like you and I have, been through some deep moments like that. It's hard to explain to somebody else, but I was there. I was ready to just check out. And what hit me was this, call it God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, hit me, and just this realization that I had two choices. Nobody was coming to save me, and my choices were I could either check out, or I could literally be my own hero and stand up for myself. And in that moment, I thought, maybe I need to stand up for myself, even if it took 20, 30 years to get back up, would it be worth it? And that was the moment where I had to be my own hero, and start standing up. And I wish I could say that the next day it got super easy. It didn't. It was a consistent journey. Yet, like you, like that was one of those moments where I just thought, yeah, I got to take a stand for me, and it's led to this whole journey of being my own hero and helping other people, be their own heroes.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful. And I just, it's so true that just because you decided to live that day doesn't mean all of a sudden it was
Yeah.
rainbows and sunshine and every day was
Yes.
easy. You know, it's honestly, this human experience is hard, you guys. There's so many ups and downs, and there is just constant, for me, I still have days where, like you said, it's hard to get out of bed, even though we might know what that greater purpose and vision is for our life. Sometimes that weight of that responsibility can get to be just so much that we
Yeah.
just need a day off. We need a break, right?
Amen. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I love the purpose that you have. I was, looking at some of your information that you sent me, and the purpose that you wrote down was to empower people to be all that they can be and to help them transform their lives fast.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that that's a really key word I want to kind of focus on is there's no quick fix when it comes to healing. There's no quick fix when it comes to feeling better. But there are certain things that have worked for me, and I know for other people that I've spoken to that really did rapidly progress their lives. So what are
Yeah.
some things that kind of clicked for you, if you can think of anything specific maybe, or even
Yeah.
in people, when you're working and coaching with others, what are some things that really help us to see results and to, take that progression in our life forward in a much quicker way?
Well, I think the first thing for me was the realization, especially as like, we use this phrase like high achievers, whatever you want to call it, workaholics, whatever, however you want to look at it. But one of the things that I realized for me was I only had, like, I looked at my tool bag of like take care of myself or get back up, whatever it is. And I looked at this tool bag and like there was nothing there, right? The only tool I had was hammer, right? Like work harder, get after it, grind, hustle, whatever it is. And like that could be a good tool, but like, it can't be the only one. You know what I mean? And like a lot of us, when we have hard days, what's interesting is, if you ever get locked out of your house, the next day you like go and buy a hide key or something. You do something. You go, I'm never going to let that happen again. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
have a spare tire in your car. You do all these things in like our physical world, but in our mental world, we don't really have like a first aid kit. We don't have a toolbox full of tools. So my first realization was I need to put tools in my tool bag, and when I figure out what some of those are, I'm going to share those with others. And my goal is to help other people kind of pack a tool bag so that like when you have those bad days, you can like reach over and like grab. You have a couple different options of stuff you can pull from. So like that was the big thing for me. It's just like I didn't have anything to pull from, and that was the first one. And then the second thing was understanding so many different things. Like I love unwrapping what's actually happening in our mental world. You know what I mean? What's actually going on? What's causing pain? What's causing frustration? So understanding that and empowering people with a lot of that knowledge. But some of it is, like the questions I ask myself. I would ask myself really negative, disempowering questions. And if I could switch that to like more empowering questions. So instead of like, what did I do wrong? I would ask myself, like, what can I do better next time? What did I learn? What am I going to do in the future? So like those forward moving questions. That was a lot of it, but just like figuring like I need to have a tool bag full of stuff, right? And one of the tools might be like go for a 5 minute walk, like without your
Mhm.
phone, right? But like or write something down, like. But really figuring out what those are, I feel is like step one, and it's amazing that nobody teaches us to do that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I love that, having a toolbox. And like you said, some days it's not the same exact tool that you have to grab.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
some days things work differently than others. So for me, I might have to, pull myself out of bed and get through the day. And then some days I also know it might mean I might have to cancel a meeting or two. I might have
Yeah.
to just reschedule because I truly cannot show up in the way that I know I need to for that, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And so just I think really importantly, just knowing yourself and what works for you, but also just giving yourself grace to know that some days are going to be better than others, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and understanding the difference, right? When do I need to push through and when do I just need to take care of me a little bit? And I
Right.
think the other part of that too, especially, I get to work with so many, high achievers, successful people in however you want to rate that. Um, but one of the biggest things that we have to instill is like, what is their maintenance plan? Like, what do we do so we have less crash and burn kind of moments? And I think that's another thing is like putting in place just like your car has a maintenance plan, what is your personal maintenance plan?
Mhm.
How often do you need a day off? How often do you need to, hang out with your friends? How often do you need to meditate? What are the things you need to do to keep yourself in a great place so you have less of those kind of crash and burn ones? I think so many of us, like so many people I work with, are so close to the edge they're like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Right? They're like right on the edge. So like they get a parking ticket and they start crying for half an hour. Like, what is wrong with me?
Yes.
It was $20. But it's like
Yeah.
you were so close to the edge. Like
Yes.
maybe we backed up 10 feet, you'd have a little bit more like margin in your life, because stuff's gonna show up. So I think that's it's really equipping in a lot of those ways.
Yeah. What are some ways that you can tell when you are reaching your limit, when you're
Oh
going to
my
need to take a
gosh,
break
there's so
soon?
many. Now like I view them as like lights on my dashboard that like start blinking. You know what I mean?
Right.
One is when I start to justify. So when I start justifying, like making excuses for why I didn't do something or why I should, like justification is a big red flag in my mind. Right? I start hearing myself justify. Another one is like I know myself a little better now than I used to, and I know that if I only get, I can go on like 5 or 6 hours of sleep for a really long time. But if I get like 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, like I know I'm about to get weird, right? Like I know if I have too many of those nights, like I think the world's gonna end. I think right. It's like I start to get weird really fast, and that's a big one for me. So yeah, I think that's a big part of like listening to some of those things. Yeah, like if I'm not having fun, like I make more money, I'm a better leader, I'm a better dad when I have some fun. So if like I haven't had fun in a while, like that's another big one that I need to kind of watch out for.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I always like to say, life is just not meant to be taken so seriously.
No,
Honestly, it doesn't mean
yeah,
that life's always going to be easy, but it doesn't have to be so serious all the time.
yes,
We can
yeah,
play, we can have fun, we can let ourselves just relax. And
yes,
that's where true just peace comes from.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it was fun. One time, one of my buddies came up with this, but we had he challenged me to do a month of belly laughs. So like literally every day for a month to like belly laugh with my kids. And like it was a little bit of a challenge some days, but like it was so fun. Like every day we're gonna have some sort of belly laugh. Like I'm gonna make them, laugh. And it was a cool little challenge. So
Oh,
yeah,
I love that. Yes,
important.
that's so important. I just got on a phone call with my three best friends yesterday, and we haven't really been able to do that for at least 6 months, probably. And I'm like, you just
Yes,
forget how important it is to just connect and just get back to
yes,
those roots, which is just family and friends. And you can just be yourself and not have any pressure. I just love that so
yes,
much.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
So going back to, some of the things you said, where for me that really just means when it comes to healing, when it comes to, being that hero of your own story,
Yeah.
a big key to that is taking responsibility. I don't know if you can relate to that, but when you have to face up and say, a lot of this was my fault, like I kind of got myself here. I know that was just a hard lesson to learn for me. I'm curious what that was like for you.
Oh man, I think there's a difference between I think there's three levels. There's sometimes something's your responsibility, but it wasn't your fault. Right? Like if I get rear-ended, it may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility how I deal with it. But the other two levels is I think there's a big difference between like responsibility and just living in purgatory. And what I did for a long time was I thought I was taking responsibility, but what I was really doing was just beating the crap up out of myself. And it was almost like I felt better about, like I felt like I was making myself pay this price for my screw ups.
Mhm.
But what I realized was I wasn't actually serving anybody. Like it wasn't helping my kids, it wasn't helping like it wasn't making anything better. I actually felt better about myself beating myself up, which I know sounds really weird, but it was like I was a victim in a tuxedo. It was just like it was just like a fancy form of being a victim in a sense. So
Mhm.
for me, responsibility is like acknowledging it's like stop, drop, and roll, right? It's like stopping, drop, like acknowledging what it is, and then deciding how I'm going to roll. And for me, my phrase for that is like next right decision. What's the next right decision, right? I may have screwed up this appointment, or I may have messed this up, or I may have hurt this relationship. And I can mourn that for a moment. I've mourned a lot of my screw ups. You know what I mean? Like, man, that's going to affect my kids. That's right. I can mourn that for a moment. But then it's my job to not live in that funeral and then to go, what's the next right thing? What's the next right decision? Um, and a lot of times I don't know the next 15 right decisions, but I know the next one. And my job is to take that one. And what I realized, another way to look at responsibility too is I think that what holds most people back from happiness is not taking responsibility. It's really hard to be happy if you're not taking responsibility for your life. If
Mhm.
that makes sense. And it's kind of the analogy of if you ever been in a grocery store and like, a kid, or even in my case, my kid, right? Like your 3-year-old's throwing a fit, right? And in the back of your mind, you're like, man, if they would just act better, then I would be happy. I may not say it that exact way, but I'm kind of right. If my clients just did the right thing, then I would be happy. If my kid, stopped throwing a tantrum, like then I would be happy. And it's like, I've given my joy, my happiness to a 3-year-old that's going to throw a fit that does what 3-year-olds do, right? Like I gave all my happiness into the hands of a 3-year-old who's going to throw a tantrum. Like it's crazy, right? Like I am responsible for my happiness, regardless of what's happening out there. It doesn't mean it's easy, but like as soon as I take responsibility, then I can begin to be happy
Oh my
for,
gosh,
for for
yes.
where I am. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. That was exactly what I was thinking too, where it's in terms of, well, gosh, I have so many things that came up with that, but what's the next right decision? That's such a powerful question because for me, the mantra that has been playing over in my mind the past 6 months or so is really just that phrase of start where you are, use what you
mm,
have, do what you can. And I realized that I have such a big vision for my life and the impact that I want to be making, but I get so overwhelmed with everything that I could be doing and all of these different things that, I feel like I should be doing. And I freeze up. I never start. And so it's like finally when I realized just start, there is a decision here that you can be making. There is an action that you can be taking
yeah,
and just use exactly what you have. And I think that's just so powerful to just know that there's always an answer. If we just kind of clear all of that debris and all of that chaos that's in our minds sometimes, if we just let ourselves be present in that moment, there's always a solution. There's
yeah,
always an answer. And like you said, there's always a tool for us to use. It's
yeah,
within us always.
yeah. Amen. Amen.
Yeah, absolutely. But I
I
do
find a lot
know.
of it is like you said, the questions I ask myself, and that's a huge one for me. Like the questions I ask makes such a difference.
Mhm.
And then I actually have in my book, I literally have a page that's literally, and I'll give you the link for it later, but it's literally just like there's a list of questions that I pull out if I'm like tilted or if I'm in a tough spot, and I'll read through those questions, and they really help me center.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like you said, if I'm depressed, I'm probably living in the past. If I'm anxious, I'm probably living in the future. And like really just how do I get back to present and just do the next right thing?
Yeah, that's incredible. And taking, and it comes back to taking responsibility is answer those questions because I know for me, I was doing a course recently and it was a lot of mindset work and she was asking me all these questions and I'm thinking, well, I already know all the answers. I already know what stories I tell myself. I've done so much subconscious work already, right? And so I'm like, well, why don't I sit down and actually answer the questions though and just see what comes up at this time in
Yeah,
my life? And I realized all these amazing things started clicking and just more and more layers come off when, yeah, you might have done, plenty of work on yourself up until now, but there's always an added layer that you can like just pull away and see, we're faced with all of these similar challenges in our life and all of these past events are always going to be replaying and we get triggered, right? But
absolutely.
when you know that you're healing, when you know that you're taking responsibility for your life, it's saying, well, I'm going to go ahead and take the time to answer and,
Yeah.
kind of explore where these feelings, all these thoughts are coming from. I think that is just so important to do.
I think it's so huge. Somebody gave me the analogy of a snow globe, and I love it. And they said, most of us live life like we're in the snow globe, and we're living life, but the snow globe is like always shaking. I know I've felt that way so many times in life. Like it's just like I feel like I'm in a blizzard. You know what I mean? And yet, how much of that do we do to ourselves? Like I get in the car, the music's on. I come home, the rate right. It's like there's stuff going on all the time, and like very seldom do we like let the snow in the snow globe like settle and look
Mhm.
around, right? Like and we're like, oh my gosh, I didn't see an opportunity there. Like I was running in the wrong direction or whatever it is. It, like you're saying, like taking a moment to like let it really settle and looking at it that way. And
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's interesting that you and I resonate on is we've got it's actually selfish to not take care of ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
And looking at that when they did that, I'm sure you've read that study. There's a study that they if you were responsible for giving someone else their medication after surgery, you would give it to them with like 98% accuracy, right? It's like every 2 hours on the dot, right? Like you got alarms, you're making them take it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's amazing. But the same study said if we're responsible for giving ourselves the same medication after surgery, we're like 54% accurate.
It's insane. Yeah.
Right? Like that's crazy, but it's not how it is, right? Like I
Right.
always ask people, I say, what would your best friend tell you to do?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, my best friend tells me this every time we have lunch together, every single time.
Yes,
Okay, Amanda, right, but first take care of you. Like I'm always thinking, because I'm with
yes,
my mom now. I'm like, well, my mom's been having a lot of health issues, and I'm worried about her. And I set her up an appointment at the spa, and I wanted her to go do the sauna, and she's like, okay, that's great. I'm glad you're helping your mom. What are you doing for you? Like,
yes. You're like, oh shoot, I
yeah.
don't know. I haven't really
And it's
thought of it. Yeah,
and it's the same. It takes me back to my time in Dallas when I had a real estate coach where she would be like, okay, so you're, envisioning what you're going to do with your money, right? Like, when you are, finding financial abundance, what are you going to do with all of that? The top 5 things on my list were buy mom a house, buy my nephews this, buy my niece this. And it's like, what are you gonna buy yourself? What are you gonna do for yourself? And it's just my natural instinct. And
yes,
I tend to just think, okay, what can I do for others? But it has been such a lesson for me to take this time to really realize, like you said, until I feel whole and complete within myself, I simply do not have the energy to expand, into others.
yeah,
So
yeah.
such a lesson. It's a dose of medicine for sure to take.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do want to go back to that analogy of, your 3-year-old in the store. And if my 3-year-old is acting better and we're giving away that happiness. So, what are some ways that we can bring, our happiness back within ourselves? How can we not let the external things really just get in the way of our own joy?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I think that it is mostly our. I think it's probably two things. One is our perspective, right?
Mhm.
Like what keeps me in check. So the other day, I was having not the best day ever, and I was scrolling through my phone, and I saw a picture of one of my friends and his daughter. Is I think she's 5 now. She's been fighting aggressive cancer for the past year and a half,
Yeah.
and they're on a hike. She's in the woods. She's got this huge lump on her head, and she's carrying like this little bag of oxygen, this medicine that she has to carry that pumps into her body all day long. Right, this chemo medicine she's pumping. This little machine she carries everywhere. She's on this hike, and she's got the biggest smile in the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, shoot, all this kid has ever known is pain and fight,
Mhm.
and she's having the best day ever. And I'm complaining about my day, like, and not that my problems don't matter, but it puts it back in perspective really, really quick. You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think perspective is a huge one for me. My 11-year-old son the other day, we're driving, and he's like, I was talking about something. He goes, Dad, somebody always going to be doing better than you. And I was like, okay, hold on, what? And what he meant though was like, there's always going to be somebody doing better than me. And by the way, there's always going to be someone that wishes they were where I am, right? Like I've got to run my own race, right?
Mm.
There's always going to, it was funny that I was listening to someone who I look up to, I can't remember his name, but he's wildly successful. And he was talking about how somebody else is even more successful than him and it like ruined his day, right? And he's going this whole thing. And I'm going, even this dude is like beating himself up for not being there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just reminds me that the greatest thief of joy is comparison.
Mm. Mhm.
And you talk about triggers. When I find that I'm comparing, that's like alarm bells in my mind now that I need to get back to. I need to get back to me. Am I doing my best? Am I doing the next right thing that I need to be doing today? So that's a huge one for me in my world to kind of help resume. So I think perspective is really huge.
Sure.
Um, and then I think that you look at some of the things. It's hard to live in gratitude and fear at the same time. So, one of my, tools in my tool bag is, I'll call somebody and just give them gratitude, or I'll send somebody a note of gratitude. Like that's a big one for me. So having these little things I think I can do that center me. And then another big one for me is just reminding myself who I am every morning. And I think that if I don't kind of remind myself who I am, the world's going to try to tell me who I am, and that's probably not going to be to my advantage.
Right.
So it's like these little rituals that may not seem all that huge on the outside, but when I stop doing them, it starts messing me up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a few different things came up for me there. So take me back from that moment when you were in that abandoned warehouse, you were, at that rock bottom moment, not wanting to go on anymore. And how long would you say it took you to kind of get to this point where you did start taking productive action in your life and, start, like you said, learning who you really are? Because that was for me, a little bit about my story. My listeners obviously know, but from that time of being evicted to having to live in my car for a year, it took me about halfway through that year to realize, okay, wait, like I hold the power and like this is my reality. So I have to fix it. So how long would you say it took you to get some progress in your life?
Man, I mean, I think that it was like you say, and that's one of the things I love about your message and story is that there's not one like simple path, right? It's not like, hey, these 8 steps, you know what I mean? So I think there were like moments, right? So I'd go a couple weeks and have this moment of like, oh my gosh, I needed that. It felt a little bit like I was on a scavenger hunt and I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be looking for,
That's
right? But
exactly
you
how it
you
felt
find
for me.
these little
Yes.
nuggets, you know what I mean? So I think every couple weeks I'd find another little nugget. And one of the mantras I told myself was, if I can get through this, I'm gonna help other people get through it too. Like if I can get through this, I'm gonna collect some of the stuff that helped me and share with others, and if it helps them, awesome. And one of the things that my I actually had a therapist tell me, and she said, the most wounded people usually make the biggest impact. And you're right, because when you're wounded, when you're sleeping in your car, when you go through some of this soul pain stuff, um, there's some gifts you can only get by going through that, and that helped me. You know, I mean, some days when I was like, man, when I was having my soul pain or whatever, it's like, this is going to help me help someone someday, and that was one of the things that kind of carried me through. But I think it wasn't just one thing, but it was a collection of little things, and it was just like it was kind of being on a mission to find a bunch of pieces that I knew would help me that could eventually help other people. So that helped a
Mhm.
lot. And then yeah, I was just kind of getting some people around me. Telling my story was a big one. I remember like when I finally just was okay. I was in a room teaching a class one time, and I felt like I was supposed to be perfect. And then I was like, being perfect isn't helping anybody. I have not mastered all. Some of the stuff that I'm teaching, I'm freaking best in the world at. Some of it I still suck at. And I remember I just was like, here's where I'm at, and that was a big moment for me as well. So just lots of little moments along the way.
Yeah, you're telling my story because that's exactly how it was, where I had no idea what I was looking for. I just knew that there was something there. Like I was
Right.
like, there's
Yeah.
some answer out there to be found. I don't know. I didn't even know the right questions to ask. All I
Yes.
knew was, like you said, I made the intention of I'm going to live another day. I'm going to take this day by day.
Yes.
And whatever is meant to come to me, I just trusted that it would. And it sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And it was like, but I think if I was watching this, I would tell you just continue to do, become a seeker, and just seek and look for the next the right thing, the next right thing, and just pour in. There's no one way, but it's worth continuing to figure out.
Right. And like you said though, in that, comparison of others and where they are and where you're at, it's so important to understand that your pain is valid no matter if you think it's as traumatic as someone else's and what happened to them. If no one maybe can relate to my story, no one might be, relating exactly to your story, but they can understand the key concepts, which is, you know, you'd made the decision to keep going when life is so hard. Life can be so painful. And that reminds me of a quote that you posted on social media recently. I'm going to read it out. It says, to feel pain and to want to throw in the towel is human. To allow yourself to feel the immense pain and then make the choice to keep going, that is a heroic act.
Yeah.
I think that's so important, in this concept of becoming your own hero and telling your hero's journey, understanding that there's going to be a lot of pain. Like we have to get through that pain and process that in order to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's like we're all. I remember someone came to me one time. They go, "So you're saying I'm not messed up?" And I was like, "No, you're super messed up. You're just not alone. Like we're all messed up. Like we've all got our cross to bear. You're just not alone." And
Yeah.
like there's no arriving point, right? Like you just gotta
Right.
fall in love with the journey, because like you said, like the deeper you go in this, the deeper you realize there is, right? It's like, I
Yes.
thought I got this. You're like, no, there's like 6 more levels. And I think you just gotta fall in love with the journey, and just realize you'll never necessarily arrive. But I think for me, it's treating myself like my best friend. And my best friend would let me, complain for a minute, and then they'd go, "All right, what are we doing?" Right? My best friend wouldn't let me talk crap about myself for very long. My best, like, you got to be that for you, and,
Mm.
and 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 collect the tools that you need.
Yeah, and we don't hang out with people like that very long when they're just constantly complaining and making
Oh,
excuses, and you realize this is just so negative, at some point you realize, there is truly a better way. And you just got to surround yourself with the right people and, just let yourself know really truly what's available to you. I think that's, one of these big limiting beliefs that we all share that was really taught to me as I was studying hypnotherapy and with Marissa Peer and her method. It's this feeling of being different, of being an outsider. It's a great fear that we all have, but like you said, we're all messed up. We all have things that, are going on in our lives that we're trying to cope with. And I think for me, over the past year, especially, I've realized for me, I don't want to just cope. I don't want to just be, getting through life. I want to heal. So for everything that I'm doing, everything that I'm writing, everything I'm teaching, everything I'm speaking about, I want to inspire others to go from coping to healing. Because
Yeah.
when you're healing, you are in that energy of like serving others, of letting yourself show up in this most brilliant and magnificent way that you were born to be, which is a creator for our world.
Amen.
And so, especially in inviting you onto the podcast, it's really not going to be usual that I have business coaches and on the podcast because it's not really a main focus for me. But your message and your purpose and your mission is so in line because you're not teaching people to work harder, to keep grinding, and to just hide your feelings, to suck it up. You're teaching people to live life truly, like to live your life with purpose and meaning, and to remember what's important to you. So I love that, especially you're a family man. Am I right that you have 5 children?
Amen. Yes, 5 kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speak a little bit to that. I mean, I'm so interested. I'm not a parent, but I love just hearing how other people are empowering their children to navigate this world. It's a tough world to be growing up in.
Man, yes, it is. It's wild. It's funny. It's interesting. Actually, and I don't think she'd mind me sharing this because we've talked about it, but I was talking to my mom. It's actually her 70th birthday today. So I called her a couple hours ago, wish
Oh,
her happy birthday.
birthday.
And and I said, "How are you?" And I'm happier than I've ever been. I feel better than I was. And she goes, "I feel so much better because when I raised you. Because when I was a child, she was extremely depressed, struggled with depression. She had a lot of pain, migraines, depression, everything else. Spent a lot of my childhood in bed dealing with her own battles." And she said, she goes, I wish I would have been a better mom. I feel really bad that I wasn't a better mom, yada yada. And I said, well, based on all the study I've done, the most screwed up kids are actually the best. They're the most successful ones. So the kids with the toughest childhood actually are usually the most significant ones. I tell her,
Mhm.
so I'm trying to screw up my kids the best I can. So they have an amazing life, and we laugh together. But the reality is there's no such thing as a perfect parent. Like, and
Yeah.
there's no way to do it. I think that the greatest parents are the ones that do their best. They study, they ask, they look for help, and they're willing to acknowledge their mistakes and make up for them the best they can. And there is no such thing as a perfect parent. But I think when it comes to when it comes to parenting, I think, and it comes to life in general, we're all doing the best we can. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is it doesn't necessarily mean we're doing. When I had my affair, that wasn't the right thing to do. Yet looking back, I can have compassion for the guy that was just trying to do the best to take care of himself at that moment. It wasn't the right thing, but I can have compassion for that dude, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
I think acknowledging we're doing the best that we can in any given moment with the excitement of getting better and better is a big piece of it. But when it comes to my kids, I think the biggest mantra I have with them is I want to prepare them for the world rather than just try to protect them from it.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is I think that life is tough. I think they need to be resilient. I think they need to be able to deal with some punches. And my job is to prepare them for that and help them really know who they are, that they're resilient, that they're powerful, that they're whole, that they're loved, that their value comes from who they are, not what they do. And that's it for me. And I have these great moments of parenting, and I have like moments where I'm like, I should have never been given kids in the first place.
Yeah.
But it's fun though. The other day I was driving my son to school last year, and I go, dude, you gonna have a good day? And he goes, yeah, Dad, it's a choice. And I was like, all right, can you just let me record? Like, I just want to remember that forever. You know what I mean? So
Right.
like, I have these great moments, and then then there's all the rest. But
And
I
you
think
don't realize what they're picking up on always. I
yes,
love that. And, again, I'm lucky to be able to live in the same city as my niece right now. And just kind of, she's 11. And so it's just been such an interesting time just kind of watching her grow into that age. And I know, like, we were just kind of talking the other day, and she's like, I guess I kind of want to do what you do, where like you're working with people and helping people. And I'm like, I didn't even realize she realized what I do all day. I mean, I think she just thinks
yeah,
I don't know, go sit up at the library all day and just get on Twitter or whatever. So
yeah,
I think it's important. It's so cool to see when they pick up on little things, like you said, about him just repeating back to you, and maybe you don't even have to consciously, but I do think that the conversations I'm having with my mom at now almost 33 years old are so much more rewarding, even though I could reframe it in a negative way of like, I wish we should have been having these conversations when I was 16. But unfortunately
sure,
that wasn't the case. And like
yeah,
you said, our parents just do the very best with what they have at the time and what they knew to do at the time. And so I always tell her, I'm like, you're my muse, in kind of the way of, I'm doing so many things that you taught me, that I don't want to do. So I'm like,
yeah,
I know, and she knows not to take that in a bad way now, but I just mean there's so many things that she did that I would never want to catch myself
yeah.
doing. But in her taking kind of that sacrifice almost and living that way and doing that, it kind of taught me to now be able to show up in this incredible way, like you said, where I might be a little emotionally damaged a little bit, but I'm grateful for everything that I've been through in my life, everything that has happened to me. And the relationship has never been stronger between me and my mom. And I think that in today's times, our kids are just faced with all of these obstacles. I know, like, kids are on their phone 24/7. They're on top of each other. I'm trying to tell my niece and my nephews when I see them, I'm like, you don't have to respond to every notification right when it pops up. And it's just, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, it really is. And I think the best we can do to prepare them, and like you said, they're watching, and nothing breaks my heart more than and I see this a lot, especially with moms. But I see a lot with moms like sacrifice everything so their kids have a life. But what their kids see is, a mom that really loves her kids doesn't take care of themselves and doesn't do anything for themselves, and they don't realize what they're role modeling. And I think a lot of times, like if I don't role model self care, if I don't role model, being authentic, if I don't role model, that stuff, then I'm setting them up for failure. So it's yeah, no pressure.
Right. Yeah. No pressure. Just make sure you empower them and keep them alive. Right. But well, I know. Thank you for all of that. By the way, that's super helpful to people listening, I'm sure. I think I want to talk to you. I would hate to let you go without talking a little bit more about this concept of fear. I wrote it down in my notes. Like, I want your opinion. I know for sure that you are someone that can talk about facing that fear because, our mind hates the unknown. Our mind hates the unfamiliar. So, whenever we're trying to expand, whenever we're trying to create something new for our life, we tend to just get all these, alarms going off in us, and we start to face all these limitations and restrictions. And so how do we overcome the fear of, creating a life of impact and a life of more purpose?
Oh, what an easy question to answer. I think it's the first piece. There's probably two pieces to it. The first piece is you get really good at time travel. If you want to have an amazing life, you get good at time travel. And what I mean by time travel is, what's the impact a year from now? What's the impact 5 years from now? What's the impact, when I'm sitting in my rocking chair at 80? But I think time travel is one of the things that helps us realize what's the pain of not doing this, a year from now, if I can, right? So I think that's a big one. And can I go to a year from now and really get clear on what that pain is? It's like someone that needs to start taking care of themselves better, and having them visualize not being able to walk their daughter down the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can get them to get wicked clear on that picture, that then we can bring that emotion into today and go for the walk or call the doctor or eat whatever. So I think time travel is a big one. And I think the other one that is so true is the fear doesn't go away. And what I mean by that is courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage isn't I psych myself up so much I'm not fearful anymore. But courage is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I believe that it's like there's no way around it or over it, or right. You got to go right through it.
Sure.
And I think it's just going, I'm going to have 5 minutes of courage and the reward's going to be huge. But I think you feel the fear and you do it anyway, in a sense.
Mhm.
But you've got to have a big vision of why to pull you through it.
Sure. Yeah. That why is so important. And going back to, like you said, just knowing who you are. And
Yeah.
so I know for me, I had a spiritual awakening in 2020, and it was a really powerful experience of truly realizing who I am, like on a core level, just knowing that all of this stuff and all of this world around me is meant to help me and to meant support me in my evolution. And who I am deep down is someone that is incredibly powerful and someone that has so much to offer. And so that message of why I'm waking up in the morning, it became so much simpler because I knew that even if I had a bad day, even if, the next 3 days didn't really work out in my favor, it was going to be okay because I see the bigger picture now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. So I love asking this question to everyone that comes on, but tell me, Wayne, what is the power that you have found through healing?
The power I've found through healing is, I don't think I've ever been asking it quite that way. I believe the power is the permission to be me. I think is the power, and to realize that my gift, and I think that my job is to help people find their gift. But my gift that I give away with reckless abandon is helping other people see the greatness they have in themselves. So I think being able to get out of my own way was probably the biggest gift. And now I go, I'll help other people become their own hero, and find their gift to give away recklessly.
Yeah, and I love that. And so anyone that's listening is hopefully going to be inspired to really take a look back at their life and understand that truly this has been a journey of becoming your own hero. And that's the theme of this episode. And so I guess my last question then is, what is that importance in sharing your story with others?
Man, I think about how many stories have helped me, and the authors have no idea.
Hmm.
Right. And I remember, I think it was Jim Rohn who said, every room you walk into, somebody's thinking about throwing in the towel. Like there's one person in that room that's thinking about throwing in the towel. And I recognize my story isn't for everybody, right? And I'm not trying to be everything to everyone. And yet, there's a verse in the Bible that to whom much is given, much is required. And to me, what that means is I've been poured into by so many, and it's my somewhat of my obligations. It's my gift. It's my pleasure, whatever, to be able to pour that back out. But I think that your story is important to somebody,
Mm.
and it's going to impact someone. It's not meant for everybody, but there's someone out there that is, and I would say this, if you're watching or listening to this, there's someone out there suffering because you haven't shared your story yet.
Yeah.
And when you share your story, it's going to heal someone, and you'll probably never even know who they were.
Yeah. Yeah, that just gave me goosebumps all throughout my body. I mean, truly, that is so accurate, where you have no idea who's waiting for you to use your voice and to speak
Yeah,
your truth. And by you not doing that, you have no idea who you're not, who's waiting and not being able to live their life as fully
yeah,
because of it. And for me, yes, absolutely, sharing my story of my rock bottom. It's been about a year now, and just every time I get to tell it now, a little piece of me just feel I can literally just feel it just becoming more whole and more complete. And I love that. And it doesn't mean that, we're always broken. I don't want people to think, oh, I think you need to heal because you're broken. I think you need to heal because there's so much more to you to be expressed.
yeah.
You can't express yourself fully when you're so distracted and you're delaying, all of this amazing life that is waiting for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I view it as, there's a story, and you probably heard about the sculptor that sculpted the statue of David. And I love the story because he talks about, somebody came up to him and said, how did you make, sculpt such a beautiful statue? And the sculptor said, he just removed everything that wasn't David. And I
Mm.
think for so many of us, it's not that we need to change and become something different. We just need to remove stuff that we've held on to that isn't serving us, right? It's like releasing a pain, releasing a self image, releasing a view, releasing somebody else's opinion of us, whatever it is. Like, and the more that we release that, we just get back to our true essence. And like you said, like that was your awakening. Like you figured out who you were, right, in just who you are, right, regardless of all the other stuff. And I think that's so much of the work you and I get to do is just helping people get rid of stuff they've picked up along the way that just isn't serving them. And once we get rid of all that, it's like, I don't need to change you. I just need to get you back to you. The loving, fun, amazing, caring, inspirational, whoever, right, that is. Like, we just need to get rid of the stuff you picked up along the way that isn't serving you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was doing an interview recently where I had said, first we have to release that emotional attachment to those past events and experiences. And I say that, on rotation all the time, but it's true. We have to release that emotional attachment. He's like, well, that's easier said than done. And I agree that, it is easier said than done, but at some point you realize enough is enough. I deserve more. I'm worth more. I'm capable of more. And so you just, for someone that's not ready, though, we can't help anyone who's not ready to hear that or to really embody that. And I'm sure you've encountered that too, where, we want to save everyone. We want to help heal everyone. But until they're ready, there's nothing we can do other than just demonstrate it, just to live it and let them witness it.
Amen. Well, and it's hard either way, right? Like, it's hard to release that stuff, and it's hard to hold on to it, right? Like, there's not an easy button that I know of, right? Like, it's hard. It's hard to do self work. It's hard to not do self work, right? So it's like, just choose your hard time travel and figure out which one you're going to be most proud of.
I love that. I love that. Is there anything else that you can think of when it comes to this hero's journey, this healing journey? Anything that you would love to just share with anyone?
I think I would just think, like you said, like, you're worth it, and just do the work. If you're lost, confused, frustrated, like, grab a journal, walk in the woods for a day. Like, do whatever you need to do to take care of you. And there's not a one size fits all, but it's worth it to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much for being so generous with your time. I will make sure that everyone has your information to stay in touch with you and to just follow you on the social media, because I love your posts and everything that you're doing out in the world. So thank you so much, Wayne.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for everything you're doing as well.